My name is Caitlin, 35 years old, Senior Project Director at Aurora Tech Solutions. I stood there in that luxurious banquet hall, champagne glass trembling in my hand, as CFO Richard Bennett had just publicly stripped me of the $230 million project I had built from scratch. The smirk on his face as he announced my replacement still burns in my memory. Little did he know about the special clause I had inserted into our contract just 1 month earlier. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from, hit that like button, and subscribe to join me on this wild corporate roller coaster. The path that led me to that fateful night began long before I ever set foot in Aurora Tech Solutions. I graduated from Stanford with honors in business administration, a degree that had cost me countless sleepless nights and student loans that would follow me for years. But every hour of study, every instant ramen dinner in my tiny apartment had been worth it. I was determined to make my mark in the tech industry. My career started like many others, as an entry-level analyst at a mid-sized tech company. I was hungry, ambitious, and willing to put in the hours that others wouldn't. Over 10 years, I methodically climbed the corporate ladder, moving between 3 companies, each step bringing more responsibility, higher stakes, and valuable lessons about how business really works. By the time I joined Aurora Tech Solutions, I had built a reputation as someone who could manage complex projects and deliver results. Aurora was different from my previous employers. It was a company at the forefront of supply chain management software, developing solutions that helped global corporations track, manage, and optimize their entire supply networks. When I first walked through those glass doors with the Aurora logo etched elegantly into them, I felt I had finally found my professional home. The company culture initially felt like a breath of fresh air. Teams collaborated instead of competed. Innovation was celebrated, not feared. And most importantly, leadership seemed to genuinely value their employees. Sophia Adams, our CEO, had built the company on the principle that taking care of your people leads to taking care of your customers. She had a warm but commanding presence, with a remarkable ability to remember personal details about everyone she met. In my first week, she recalled that I had mentioned growing up in Connecticut during my interview and asked how my family was doing. It was a small gesture, but it made an impression. My relationship with the leadership team started strong. Sophia took me under her wing, inviting me to executive lunches and seeking my input on strategic decisions. Jessica Thompson quickly became both colleague and friend. We bonded over late nights preparing for client presentations and our shared love of true crime podcasts. She headed up the development team and had a brilliant technical mind that perfectly complemented my project management skills. William Parker, our legal director, initially intimidated me with his precision and formality, but I came to respect his methodical approach to everything. He was the kind of lawyer who read every word of every contract, a trait that would later prove invaluable. Then there was Richard Bennett, our CFO. From the beginning, there was something distant about him. He was polite enough in meetings, but his smiles never quite reached his eyes. He treated me with professional courtesy, but I always sensed he was calculating something behind those wire-rimmed glasses. I didn't think much of it at the time. Finance executives often have a different perspective than those of us on the product side. Everything changed when Sophia called me into her office one Tuesday morning. Her normally relaxed demeanor had been replaced with an intensity that immediately grabbed my attention. "Caitlin, I have something big for you," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "This is Quantum Edge. It is a $230 million project, the largest in our company history." I opened the folder to find an executive brief outlining a revolutionary supply chain management system. It would leverage artificial intelligence to create a self-learning platform that could predict disruptions, automatically adjust to market changes, and optimize global supply chains in real time. "We are competing against the biggest players in the industry," Sophia continued, "but I believe you are the right person to lead this. Your track record speaks for itself." The pride that washed over me in that moment is hard to describe. After years of working my way up, proving myself again and again, I was being handed the most significant project in company history. This would be my defining achievement, the project that would cement my place in the industry. The board has approved the budget, and we have preliminary interest from several Fortune 100 companies, Sophia explained. You will have full authority to build your team and establish the project structure. Richard will oversee the financial aspects, but this is your baby. That mention of Richard was the first tiny cloud in my otherwise perfectly blue sky. I nodded, pushing away the slight unease. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let anything dim it. Over the next few weeks, I immersed myself in preparations. I researched the market extensively, analyzing competitors and identifying our unique value proposition. I developed a comprehensive strategy for everything from technical architecture to marketing positioning. I created detailed timelines, risk assessments, and contingency plans. Nothing was left to chance. During this time, I also got to know Alexander Davis, another senior manager who had joined the company around the same time I did. Alexander had an impressive resume and an even more impressive ability to insert himself into high-profile projects. He was charming and well-connected, with a network that spanned several major tech companies. We maintained a cordial relationship, but there was an undercurrent of competition that we both acknowledged with knowing glances across conference room tables. As I assembled the foundational elements of the Quantum Edge project, I couldn't have known that I was also laying the groundwork for the most challenging professional battle of my life. But looking back, the signs were there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for me to notice them. Building the team for Quantum Edge became my obsession. This wasn't just any project. It was a career-defining opportunity that demanded nothing short of excellence. I needed the absolute best talent we could find, people who weren't just technically skilled, but who had the vision and drive to revolutionize an entire industry. Over 6 intense weeks, I personally interviewed over 75 candidates, ultimately selecting 25 specialists to form the core team. Each person was chosen not just for their technical expertise, but for how they would mesh with the team culture I was determined to create: collaborative, innovative, and resilient. The team included 12 software engineers specializing in different aspects of our technology stack. Elena Rodriguez became our lead architect, bringing experience from her work on distributed systems at major tech companies. Jason Kim headed up our artificial intelligence division, with a PhD from MIT and 3 patents to his name. Rachel Foster led our data analytics group, having previously built predictive models for retail giants. The team was rounded out with 4 product managers, 3 UX designers, and 4 quality assurance specialists. With the internal team taking shape, my next priority was finding the right external partner. We needed a company that could provide specialized expertise in global logistics while helping us scale quickly. After evaluating 7 potential partners, Global Sync Technologies emerged as the clear frontrunner. Global Sync had an impressive track record of implementing complex supply chain solutions across various industries. Their CEO, Jonathan Reed, was a forward-thinking leader who had transformed his company from a traditional consulting firm into a technology innovator. Our initial meetings were promising, with both sides recognizing the potential for a groundbreaking collaboration. What you are proposing with Quantum Edge could fundamentally change how global supply chains operate, Jonathan said during our second meeting. The self-learning capabilities you are describing would give companies unprecedented ability to anticipate and adapt to disruptions. His enthusiasm matched my own, and we quickly moved toward more formal discussions. As the partnership talks progressed, I found myself thinking about a mentor from earlier in my career. Patricia Morgan had been my boss at my second job, a brilliant strategist who took no shortcuts when it came to protecting her projects and her people. In business, Caitlin, she once told me, hope for the best but always have a backup plan, especially when the stakes are high. That advice had saved me more than once over the years. Now, as I prepared to embark on the most significant project of my career, Patricia's words echoed in my mind. I decided to build in a safeguard just in case. Working closely with William Parker and our legal team, I began crafting the contract with Global Sync. The document was extensive, covering everything from intellectual property rights to milestone payments and quality standards. But I was particularly interested in one section. What would happen if there were significant changes to the project leadership? William, I would like to add a specific clause about project continuity, I said during one of our contract review sessions. Something that would protect both parties if there were unexpected leadership changes. He looked at me curiously. That is an unusual request. Do you have concerns about your position? Not specifically, I replied, keeping my tone casual. But on a project of this size and duration, anything can happen. People get promoted, move to different departments, or leave the company. I want to ensure stability for both us and Global Sync. William nodded thoughtfully. What did you have in mind? Clause 27.3b, I suggested. If there is a sudden change in project leadership without 60 days prior notice and without valid cause, Global Sync would have the right to temporarily seize all project assets equivalent to their investment until the situation is resolved. William raised his eyebrows. That is quite strong. The board might question it. It works both ways, I explained. If Global Sync suddenly changed their leadership team without proper transition, we would have the same rights. It is a mutual protection clause that incentivizes stability. After some discussion and refinement, William agreed to include the clause. When the final contract was presented for signature, it was 200 pages of dense legal language. Few people would read every word, and fewer still would notice clause 27.3b buried deep within the document. The signing ceremony with Global Sync was a major milestone. Jonathan Reed and Sophia Adams shook hands as photographers captured the moment. Richard Bennett was there too, his expression unreadable as he watched the proceedings. The partnership was officially launched, and development on Quantum Edge began in earnest. The first 3 months of development exceeded expectations. Our team was clicking, milestones were being hit, and the early prototypes were impressing everyone who saw them. But as the project gained momentum and visibility within the company, I began noticing subtle changes in Richard Bennett's behavior. He started requesting more detailed financial reports than normal for a project at this stage. He began appearing at technical meetings where finance executives typically wouldn't participate. He would ask pointed questions that seemed designed to highlight potential weaknesses rather than address actual concerns. I am just doing my due diligence, he would say, with that tight smile, when I questioned his unusual level of involvement. $230 million is a significant investment for Aurora. Then came the first real red flag. During a project status meeting, I caught a strange look exchanged between Bennett and Alexander Davis. It was brief, just a knowing glance and a slight nod, but it triggered an instinctive alarm in my mind. Later that same day, Bennett rejected one of my key resource allocation decisions without explanation, the first time he had directly overridden my authority as project director. As I drove home that evening, Patricia's advice about having a backup plan no longer seemed like general wisdom. It felt like a premonition. 3 months into the Quantum Edge project, we had established a solid foundation and were making remarkable progress. Our team had successfully delivered the first development milestone 2 days ahead of schedule, creating a working prototype that demonstrated the core AI capabilities of the system. When we presented this prototype to the executive team, even the typically stoic William Parker looked impressed. Global Sync was equally pleased with our progress. During our monthly partnership review, Jonathan Reed expressed his satisfaction. I have overseen dozens of major technology initiatives, but the speed and quality your team is delivering is exceptional, Caitlin. Your leadership has created something special here. This praise should have been a moment of pure professional satisfaction, but Richard Bennett's increasingly strange behavior cast a shadow over my accomplishment. During the presentation of our breakthrough adaptive routing algorithm, a feature that could save clients millions in logistics costs, Bennett interrupted repeatedly with questions about minor budget variances instead of focusing on the transformative technology we were developing. I notice you are 3% over budget on developer resources this month, he said, completely derailing our demonstration of how the system could automatically reroute shipments during natural disasters. Can you explain this discrepancy? The question was technically within his purview as CFO, but the timing and tone felt deliberately disruptive. I provided a concise explanation about accelerating certain development tasks to meet client requirements and moved on, but the interaction left me unsettled. After that meeting, the frequency and intensity of Bennett's interventions increased dramatically. He began demanding budget cuts that made little strategic sense, questioning staffing decisions that had already been approved, and implementing new approval processes that slowed our momentum. Each decision seemed calculated to create friction and undermine my authority. My suspicions turned into concrete concerns one Wednesday afternoon. I had stayed late to review some technical specifications when I passed by the break room and overheard Bennett's voice. Normally, I would have announced my presence, but something in his hushed tone made me pause. Alexander, we need to accelerate the timeline. The board meeting next month is our opportunity. I have been laying the groundwork, highlighting the budget concerns and timeline risks. Bennett's voice was low but clear. Are you sure she does not suspect anything? Alexander Davis replied. Caitlin is perceptive. She is too focused on the technical details to see the bigger picture. By the time she realizes what is happening, you will be leading Quantum Edge, and I will have the leverage I need with the board. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The conspiracy I had only suspected was being openly discussed just feet away from me. I quietly backed away from the door, my mind racing. Bennett was planning to replace me with Alexander Davis, effectively stealing the project I had built from the ground up. The next morning, Jessica Thompson pulled me aside after our daily stand-up meeting. Have you heard the rumors? She asked, her voice hushed. What rumors? People are saying Bennett is pushing for leadership changes on Quantum Edge. Some are saying Alexander Davis is being positioned to take over. Her eyes reflected genuine concern. I thought you should know. Thanks, Jess, I replied, trying to maintain a neutral expression despite the confirmation of what I had overheard. I appreciate you telling me. I needed to speak with Sophia, but getting time with the CEO proved challenging. She was in the middle of negotiations with new investors and spent most of the month traveling to financial centers around the country. Her assistant could only offer me a 15-minute slot 3 weeks out, far too late if Bennett was planning to make his move at the next board meeting. With direct intervention not immediately available, I decided to protect myself by gathering evidence. I began meticulously documenting every interaction with Bennett, saving emails, recording meetings with proper notification to participants, and keeping detailed notes of all verbal conversations. If he was building a case against me, I would be prepared to defend myself. As I dug deeper, I discovered something alarming. The financial reports Bennett had been presenting to the board painted a very different picture than our actual project metrics. Where we were on or ahead of schedule, his reports suggested delays. Where we had implemented cost-saving measures, his analysis ignored them. He was systematically misrepresenting the project's performance to support his narrative that new leadership was needed. Bennett also began excluding me from crucial meetings with the board and key stakeholders. I only learned about these meetings afterward, when decisions affecting my project had already been made without my input. Each exclusion felt like another piece of my authority being chipped away. The situation reached a new level when Bennett began directly communicating with my team members, circumventing me entirely. Several engineers reported receiving emails from him requesting information or suggesting changes to their work. The strategy was clear. Isolate me from both my superiors and my team, creating the impression that I had lost control of the project. Through it all, I maintained an outward appearance of confidence and focus. I continued leading my team effectively, hitting our milestones, and delivering on our promises to Global Sync and other stakeholders. If Bennett wanted to paint me as incompetent, I would make it as difficult as possible for him. Then came the email that sent a chill down my spine. It was an invitation to a formal banquet celebrating the 6-month milestone of Quantum Edge. Such events were common for major projects, opportunities to showcase progress to investors and partners. But one line in the invitation stood out ominously. Project Director Caitlin Walker is requested to prepare a brief speech highlighting achievements to date. Why would I be asked to prepare a speech if Bennett was planning to remove me? The request made no sense unless the banquet itself was to be the stage for my public removal. The thought of being humiliated in front of colleagues, partners, and industry peers made my stomach turn, but I forced myself to consider it objectively. If Bennett and Davis had indeed secured board support, such a public announcement would establish the new leadership decisively. As I sat in my office that evening, staring at the invitation, the weight of the situation settled heavily on me. The Quantum Edge project, my team, my professional reputation, everything I had worked for was at risk. For the first time since overhearing that conversation, I allowed myself to feel the full force of the anger and betrayal. Then, taking a deep breath, I began preparing for whatever might come at the banquet. One thing was certain. If Bennett wanted a show, I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. The Grand Marquis Hotel stood like a glittering jewel against the night sky, its Art Deco facade illuminated by carefully positioned spotlights. Under different circumstances, I would have appreciated the elegant venue chosen for our project milestone celebration. Tonight, however, all I felt was a growing sense of dread as I handed my car keys to the valet. I had prepared meticulously for this evening. My navy blue evening gown was professional yet sophisticated, projecting the image of a confident executive. I had rehearsed a brief, compelling speech, highlighting our team's accomplishments, just as requested in the invitation. But I had also prepared myself mentally for what might be coming, running through various scenarios and planning my responses. As I entered the grand ballroom, I was struck by the scale of the event. Aurora had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over dozens of elegantly set tables. A small orchestra played softly in one corner. A banner stretched across the back wall, reading Quantum Edge, revolutionizing global supply chains. Under different circumstances, I would have felt immense pride seeing my project celebrated so lavishly. The room was already filling with people. Board members mingled with senior executives. Technical team leads chatted with potential clients. I spotted Jonathan Reed from Global Sync near the bar, engaged in conversation with some of his team members. "Caitlin, you look stunning." Jessica approached, champagne glass in hand. Her smile seemed strained, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "Have you seen the seating chart? You are at the head table with Sophia and the board." "Thank you. And no, I have not checked yet," I replied, maintaining my composure despite the implications of such prominent placement. If they were planning something, they wanted me front and center for it. Over the next hour, I navigated the room strategically, speaking with key stakeholders and team members. Everyone congratulated me on the project's success, though I noticed several conversations had an odd undertone, as if people were saying goodbye rather than simply acknowledging an achievement. Jonathan Reed broke away from his group when he saw me. "Caitlin, the prototype demonstrations last week were incredible," he said, raising his glass in a small toast. "Your team has exceeded our expectations at every turn. This partnership has been one of the best decisions Global Sync has made." "Thank you, Jonathan. That means a lot coming from you," I replied sincerely. "Your team has been instrumental in helping us understand the real-world logistics challenges we are solving." As we were speaking, I noticed Richard Bennett watching us from across the room, whispering something to Alexander Davis. Both men were impeccably dressed in expensive suits, looking like they were already celebrating a victory. Soon after, the lights dimmed slightly, and Sophia Adams approached the podium. The room quieted as our CEO welcomed everyone and began speaking about the importance of innovation in staying competitive. She looked polished and professional as always, but something in her delivery seemed rehearsed, lacking her usual warmth. 6 months ago, we embarked on an ambitious journey with Quantum Edge, Sophia continued. We have reached significant milestones and shown promising results. For this, we should acknowledge the hard work of everyone involved. There was a round of applause, and I allowed myself a brief moment of hope that perhaps my fears were unfounded. However, Sophia continued. And with that single word, my hope evaporated. In the fast-paced world of technology, we must always be willing to adapt and evolve our approaches. After careful consideration and consultation with our board, we have decided that Quantum Edge would benefit from fresh leadership to take it to the next phase. A murmur rippled through the crowd. I felt dozens of eyes turned toward me, some curious, others pitying. My face remained neutral through sheer force of will. I am pleased to announce that effective immediately, Alexander Davis will be taking over as project director for Quantum Edge. Richard Bennett stepped forward, placing a hand on Alexander's shoulder as he guided him to the podium. Bennett took the microphone, his voice dripping with false sincerity. We thank Caitlin for her initial work on this project, but the board agrees we need someone with Alexander's specific expertise to handle the financial and strategic complexities moving forward. He turned to look directly at me, not even attempting to hide his smug satisfaction. You are done with the $230 million project. The room fell silent. In that moment, everything seemed to slow down. I could feel the collective discomfort of everyone witnessing this public humiliation. Jonathan Reed looked shocked. Jessica had her hand over her mouth. Even Alexander seemed uncomfortable with the spectacle, though he quickly composed himself and began thanking Bennett for the opportunity. All eyes were on me, waiting for my reaction. A scene, tears, anger, anything that would confirm I was not fit for leadership. Instead, I simply nodded and said clearly, "Understood." Just that, nothing more. No outburst, no pleading, nothing that would give Bennett the satisfaction of seeing me break. The surprise on his face at my composure was small but noticeable. As Alexander continued his acceptance speech, I felt a hand squeeze my arm. Jessica had made her way to my side. "This is wrong," she whispered. "Everyone knows it." I gave her a small smile but said nothing. Around me, I could hear the whispers beginning, colleagues discussing what had just happened, speculating about what I might have done wrong or whether this had been planned all along. When the formal presentations concluded, Bennett and Davis clinked glasses in a private toast, not even attempting to be subtle about their alliance. The message was clear. They had won, and they wanted everyone to know it. I stayed just long enough to be polite, speaking briefly with a few loyal team members who approached to express their confusion and support. Then, with my head held high, I made my exit from the ballroom. Only when I reached my car did I allow myself a moment of genuine emotion, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The drive home passed in a blur. My apartment felt unusually quiet and empty as I kicked off my heels and sat in the darkness of my living room. The humiliation I had just endured played on repeat in my mind. 8 years building my career at Aurora. Countless late nights and weekends sacrificed for the company. All of it thrown away so casually, so publicly. But as the initial shock began to fade, another emotion took its place. Determination. Bennett and Davis had orchestrated my removal, but they had made one critical miscalculation. They assumed I would accept defeat, that I would slink away quietly after being publicly disgraced. They were wrong. I walked to my home office and pulled out my copy of the Global Sync contract. Flipping to the section I had personally ensured was included, I read clause 27.3b again, confirming every detail. Then I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I had hoped I would never need to use this way. Jonathan Reed's number stared back at me from the screen. My finger hovered over the call button as I considered the consequences of what I was about to do. This could end my career at Aurora, possibly lead to legal action against me. But doing nothing meant accepting the injustice, allowing Bennett and Davis to profit from my work while destroying my professional reputation. Taking a deep breath, I made my decision and pressed call. My hands trembled slightly as I held the phone to my ear, listening to it ring once, twice, 3 times. It was nearly 11 at night, well outside normal business hours. Part of me hoped Jonathan wouldn't answer, giving me more time to consider the potential consequences of what I was about to do. Caitlin? Jonathan's voice was surprised but alert. Is everything all right? I apologize for calling so late, Jonathan, I said, working to keep my voice steady, but something has happened that you need to know about. It concerns both Quantum Edge and our partnership agreement. There was a brief pause before he replied, his tone shifting to one of concern. What is it? In that moment, standing alone in my darkened apartment, I faced the point of no return. If I continued, I would be taking action that could potentially destroy my career at Aurora, result in lawsuits, or even make me unhireable elsewhere if Bennett spun the story effectively. But if I did nothing, I would be accepting the public humiliation, allowing Bennett and Davis to take credit for my work, and essentially surrendering to corporate injustice. There has been an unauthorized leadership change on the project, I explained, choosing my words carefully. I have been removed as project director without the 60-day notice period specified in our contract, and without valid cause. I saw what happened at the banquet, Jonathan replied, his voice tight. It was unprofessional, to say the least. But Caitlin, what exactly are you suggesting? I am bringing this to your attention because it potentially triggers Clause 27.3b of our partnership agreement, I said. The clause regarding project continuity and asset rights. The silence that followed told me Jonathan was likely pulling up the contract to review the exact language. I waited, my heart pounding in my ears. The asset seizure clause, he finally said, his voice a mix of realization and apprehension. Caitlin, this is an extremely serious matter. Invoking this clause would effectively freeze the entire project until resolved. I understand the gravity, I replied. But Richard Bennett and Alexander Davis have been systematically working to undermine the project for months. I have evidence that Bennett has been misrepresenting our progress to the board and interfering with our operations. This sudden leadership change isn't about improving the project, it is about office politics and power. Even if what you are saying is true, this is an internal Aurora matter, Jonathan said cautiously. Global Sync intervening would create significant tension in our partnership. Jonathan, you said yourself that our team was exceeding expectations under my leadership. Do you truly believe this abrupt change, with no transition period, is in the best interest of the project? Or our partnership? Another long pause followed. I could almost hear him weighing the professional and ethical considerations. I will need to see evidence of what you are alleging about Bennett's actions, he finally said. Global Sync cannot act solely on your word, especially in something this consequential. I understand completely, I replied, a small wave of relief washing over me that he was at least willing to consider the situation. I can send you emails, meeting recordings, and the altered financial reports Bennett has been presenting to your team versus what he shows internally. You will see the discrepancy immediately. Send everything to my personal email, Jonathan instructed. I will review it tonight and consult with our legal team first thing in the morning. Over the next hour, I compiled a comprehensive file of evidence. Emails showing Bennett's interference, recordings of meetings where he contradicted previously approved decisions, side-by-side comparisons of the actual project metrics versus his manipulated reports, and documentation of his systematic efforts to isolate me from key stakeholders. I also included evidence of the project's actual success, including client feedback and completed milestones. After sending the file, I paced my apartment, unable to sleep, playing out every possible scenario in my mind. If Global Sync agreed to invoke the clause, what would happen next? Would Aurora fire me immediately? Would I face legal action? Had I just destroyed my career in an act of desperate retaliation? No, not retaliation, I reminded myself firmly. Protection. I wasn't trying to punish Bennett and Davis for personal satisfaction. I was protecting the project I had built, the team I had assembled, and yes, my own professional integrity. There is a difference between revenge and justice, and I was firmly on the side of the latter. At 4 a.m, my phone rang, startling me from the half-sleep I had fallen into on the couch. It was Jonathan. Our legal team has reviewed everything, he said without preamble. The evidence you provided, combined with the language in Clause 27.3b, gives us clear grounds to act. My breath caught. So Global Sync will invoke the clause? We already have, Jonathan confirmed. Official notice has been sent to Aurora's board and executive team. We have temporarily seized control of all project assets as permitted under the contract terms, pending resolution of the leadership dispute. What happens now? I asked, suddenly feeling the weight of what had been set in motion. Aurora's board has called an emergency meeting for 8 a.m. Our legal team will be there, as will I. You should prepare to attend as well. After hanging up, I moved with renewed purpose. I showered, dressed in my most professional outfit, a charcoal gray suit that projected both authority and seriousness. As I applied my makeup, I studied my reflection in the mirror. Despite not sleeping, my eyes were clear and determined. Whatever happened today would define the next chapter of my career, for better or worse. The drive to Aurora's headquarters that morning felt surreal. The familiar building where I had spent countless hours now loomed before me like an adversary. As I walked through the lobby, I could feel the stares of colleagues who had either witnessed my humiliation at the banquet or heard about it through office gossip. Just before I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text from William Parker, emergency board meeting in 30 minutes. What is going on with Global Sync and the asset seizure? Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the elevator, ready to face whatever came next. The game Bennett had started was about to change dramatically, and this time, I wasn't the only one who knew the rules. The tension in the boardroom was palpable as I entered. The long mahogany table was surrounded by Aurora's most powerful figures, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright anger. CEO Sophia Adams sat at the head, her usually composed face now etched with concern. To her right was Richard Bennett, whispering urgently to Alexander Davis. Various board members and executives filled the remaining seats, all seeming unsettled by the emergency summons. William Parker stood near the window, a thick folder of documents in his hands, his expression grave. He gave me a subtle nod as our eyes met, revealing nothing of his thoughts on the situation. I chose a seat near the middle of the table, directly in Bennett's line of sight. He briefly glanced at me, his expression shifting from surprise to cold fury before he quickly masked it with professional indifference. Sophia called the meeting to order, her voice tight with strain. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We are facing a serious situation that requires immediate attention. She turned to William. Mr. Parker, please explain what has happened. William stepped forward, his manner formal and precise as always. This morning at 5:30 a.m., Aurora received a formal notice from Global Sync Technologies. They have invoked Clause 27.3b of our partnership agreement and have temporarily seized control of all Quantum Edge assets. Murmurs of shock and confusion rippled around the table. Seized control? What does that mean exactly? Asked one board member, leaning forward with alarm. It means, William explained, that Global Sync has locked down all project repositories, revoked our access to shared development environments, and essentially frozen all work on Quantum Edge until their conditions are met. What conditions? This is outrageous, Bennett interjected, his face flushing. What right do they have to take such action? Before William could answer, the boardroom door opened. Jonathan Reed entered, flanked by two individuals in business attire who I recognized as Global Sync's legal counsel. The room fell silent as they took seats across from me. Mr. Reed, Sophia acknowledged, her tone professional but cool. Perhaps you can explain why Global Sync has taken such drastic action against its partner? Jonathan nodded. Certainly. But first, I believe your legal director was about to explain the contractual basis for our action. All eyes turned back to William, who opened his folder and extracted a document. Clause 27.3b of our partnership agreement with Global Sync states the following. He began, then read aloud. In the event of a sudden change in project leadership without 60 days prior notice and without valid cause demonstrating performance issues or misconduct, Global Sync Technologies reserves the right to temporarily seize all project assets equivalent to their investment until such time as project continuity can be assured. William looked up from the document, his gaze settling directly on Bennett. Who authorized the asset seizure? The question hung in the air, sharp and accusatory. Bennett's face had gone pale, but he quickly recovered. This is absurd. The clause clearly specifies without valid cause. We had ample cause to make the leadership change. Caitlin's management of the project has been increasingly problematic. Cost overruns, missed deadlines, poor team coordination. That is categorically false, I stated, keeping my voice calm but firm. All eyes turned to me. Quantum Edge has met or exceeded every milestone to date. We are 3% under budget overall, despite accelerating certain development phases. Client feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. That is your interpretation, Bennett shot back. The financial data tells a different story. Actually, Jonathan interjected, the data supports Miss Walker's position. He motioned to one of his legal team, who distributed folders to everyone at the table. These documents contain side-by-side comparisons of the actual project metrics versus the altered reports that Mr. Bennett has been presenting to both your board and to Global Sync. The room fell silent as everyone reviewed the documents. I watched the board members' expressions change as they realized the extent of the discrepancy. Furthermore, Jonathan continued, we have evidence of systematic efforts to undermine the project's original leadership without any performance-based justification. Bennett slammed his hand on the table. This is preposterous. Walker is clearly trying to sabotage the company after being removed from the project. She should be terminated immediately for corporate espionage and breach of confidentiality. Richard, Sophia said, her voice cutting through his outburst, are you denying the authenticity of these financial reports? Bennett hesitated, clearly calculating his response. I prepared those reports using methodologies appropriate for projects of this scale. Different analyses can yield different results. Different results? One board member echoed incredulously. According to these documents, you reported a 15% budget overrun when the project was actually under budget. That is not a different methodology. That is misrepresentation. The conversation was interrupted when Jessica Thompson entered the room, carrying a laptop. She nodded to Sophia, who had apparently requested her presence. Miss Thompson is the technical team lead for Quantum Edge, Sophia explained to the board. I have asked her to join us to provide additional perspective. Jessica set up her laptop and connected it to the room's display system. I have brought evidence that may be relevant, she said, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. With Miss Walker's permission, we began documenting unusual interventions in the project months ago. She played a series of recordings from project meetings, showing Bennett repeatedly overriding technical decisions without justification, excluding key team members from critical discussions, and even directly contradicting previously approved plans. She also displayed emails between Bennett and Davis discussing ways to create the appearance of project problems that could justify a leadership change. Alexander Davis, who had remained silent until now, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. All eyes turned to him. Alexander, Sophia said quietly, were you aware of efforts to artificially create problems in the Quantum Edge project? Davis looked from Bennett to Sophia, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he sighed. Richard told me the board had concerns about Caitlin's leadership and wanted me prepared to step in. He suggested I could help make the transition case stronger by identifying potential weaknesses in the current approach. And did you do that? William asked. To some extent, Davis admitted reluctantly. Richard promised I would be fast-tracked for executive leadership if I helped position myself as the solution to Quantum Edge's supposed problems. Bennett's face contorted with fury. You ungrateful? After everything I did to set you up? The Global Sync lawyer, who had been silent until now, spoke up, Our firm has completed a thorough review of the contract and all evidence provided. It is our legal opinion that Aurora Tech Solutions has materially breached Clause 27.3b. As such, Global Sync has exercised its contractual right to seize project assets valued at $230 million, the full value of the project to date. $230 million? Sophia repeated, visibly shaken. That is the entire project value. Yes, Jonathan confirmed. Our position is that the entire project has been compromised by this unauthorized and unjustified leadership change. This is corporate blackmail, Bennett sputtered. You cannot hold our entire project hostage over a simple leadership change. Actually, they can, Williams stated firmly. The clause is quite clear, and I advised you of its implications when you first proposed removing Miss Walker. You assured me there was valid cause that would exempt us from the clause's provisions. All eyes turned to Bennett, whose composure was rapidly crumbling. The project needed stronger leadership, he insisted. Davis has the right connections and approach to take it to the next level. Connections? A board member inquired. What connections specifically would benefit a technical AI project? Bennett's evasive response only deepened the suspicions in the room. Under persistent questioning from the board, Bennett eventually revealed that he had been positioning himself for a greater role within the company. By placing his ally Davis in charge of Aurora's most significant project, he would gain leverage to push for a promotion to Chief Operating Officer, effectively becoming second in command. So this was never about the project's success, Sophia said, her voice cold with realization. This was about your personal ambitions. Business is about seizing opportunities, Bennett replied defensively. Everyone does it. Not everyone jeopardizes a $230 million project to do it, Jonathan pointed out. The Global Sync lawyer spoke again. Our conditions for releasing the project assets are simple. Reinstate Caitlin Walker as project director with full authority, implement proper oversight to prevent further interference, and provide written assurance that any future leadership changes will follow the contractual notice period. Or, Sophia asked, though the answer was obvious to everyone, or we maintain control of the assets and terminate the partnership, keeping the technology developed thus far as compensation for breach of contract, the lawyer stated matter-of-factly. Bennett attempted to argue further, suggesting Aurora should fight Global Sync's actions in court, but he quickly found himself isolated. One by one, the board members expressed their alarm at his actions and the massive financial risk he had created. $230 million, repeated one board member, shaking his head in disbelief. We could lose everything we have invested because of this power play. After nearly 2 hours of heated discussion, Sophia called for a short break to allow the board to confer privately. Bennett tried to follow them into the smaller conference room but was pointedly asked to remain behind. When they returned 15 minutes later, Sophia's expression was resolute. The board has reached a decision, she announced. Aurora Tech Solutions will comply with Global Sync's conditions. Caitlin Walker is hereby reinstated as project director for Quantum Edge, effective immediately, with full authority as originally granted. She turned to Bennett. Richard, I am placing you on administrative leave pending a full investigation into your conduct. Please surrender your company access credentials to security before leaving the building today. Bennett's face contorted with rage. You cannot do this to me. I have been with this company for 12 years, which makes your actions all the more disappointing, Sophia replied coldly. William will escort you to clear out your office. The rest of us have a project to save. As Bennett was led from the room, his face a mask of impotent fury, I felt no satisfaction, only relief that the project and my team would be protected. Alexander Davis avoided my gaze entirely, his ambitious gamble having backfired spectacularly. Sophia turned to me. Caitlin, I owe you an apology. I failed to see what was happening and allowed myself to be influenced by Bennett's misrepresentations. Can you forgive me? Of course, I replied sincerely. You made the decision based on the information you had. Well, she said with a tired smile, It seems I need to be more careful about my sources of information in the future." She then addressed Jonathan and the Global Sync team. "We value our partnership and will take steps to ensure nothing like this ever happens again." Jonathan nodded appreciatively. "We look forward to continuing our work together, under the proper leadership." As the meeting concluded and people began to file out, I remained seated, processing everything that had transpired. In less than 24 hours, I had gone from public humiliation to complete vindication. The project I had built was back in my hands. The team I had assembled would continue their groundbreaking work. William Parker was the last to leave, pausing by my chair. "That was quite a clause you slipped into the contract," he remarked with the faintest hint of admiration in his voice. "I should read the fine print more carefully next time." I smiled. "I learned from the best, William." As he left, I sat alone in the now empty boardroom, looking out at the city skyline. The path forward would not be easy. Rebuilding trust within the company, re-establishing momentum on the project, and navigating the aftermath of today's confrontation would all require careful handling. But for the first time since overhearing that conversation in the break room months ago, I felt like I could breathe freely again. Justice, it seemed, could sometimes be found in the fine print. 6 months passed like a whirlwind. The boardroom confrontation that had seemed so climactic was now just another chapter in Aurora's history, though one that had fundamentally changed the company's trajectory. Quantum Edge had successfully completed its first phase, launching to rave reviews from industry analysts and eager adoption from our initial client base. Richard Bennett was long gone. The investigation into his activities had uncovered multiple instances of financial misrepresentation extending beyond Quantum Edge. His pursuit of power had cost him his career at Aurora and his reputation in the industry. Last I heard, he had taken a position with a small consulting firm, far from the executive suite he had coveted. Alexander Davis had been reassigned to a regional sales division, where his ambition could be channeled more productively under close supervision. He avoided me in the hallways, which suited me fine. I held no personal grudge against him, but trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild. My own position had evolved as well. 3 months after the confrontation, Sophia had called me into her office, not to remove me from a project this time, but to offer me a promotion. I was now Executive Director of Product Development, overseeing not just Quantum Edge, but all of Aurora's innovation initiatives. My office had a view of the city now, though I still spent most of my time with my teams in the development spaces. Our partnership with Global Sync had grown stronger through the crucible of our shared experience. Jonathan Reed had become not just a business partner, but a trusted ally. We had expanded our collaboration beyond Quantum Edge to include 2 additional projects, creating an innovation pipeline that positioned both companies at the forefront of supply chain technology. The corporate culture at Aurora had transformed as well. Sophia had initiated a comprehensive ethics program, with William Parker leading workshops on ethical leadership and decision-making. Transparency became a core value, with new reporting structures designed to prevent the kind of manipulation Bennett had employed. Perhaps most gratifying was seeing Jessica Thompson thrive in her new role as Deputy Project Director for Quantum Edge. Her technical brilliance combined with a newly discovered talent for leadership made her the perfect person to help me manage the expanding project. "The Singapore implementation is ready for deployment," Jessica reported during our weekly status meeting. "The client is already talking about expanding to their European operations based on the preliminary results." "That is excellent news," I replied. "Make sure the team knows their hard work is paying off." After the meeting, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year. The professional lessons were obvious. Document everything, know your contracts, build strong relationships, and always have a contingency plan. But the personal lessons ran deeper and would stay with me throughout my career. I learned that real strength is not about never falling, but about how you rise after being knocked down. When Bennett humiliated me at that banquet, he thought he was ending my career. Instead, he created an opportunity for me to demonstrate resilience and integrity in the face of adversity. I discovered the critical importance of understanding the legal frameworks that govern our professional lives. That single clause, 27.3b, had been my lifeline in a storm of corporate politics. As Patricia had taught me years ago, always have a backup plan when the stakes are high. Perhaps most importantly, I gained a deeper appreciation for the power of genuine relationships. Jessica standing by me, Jonathan believing my evidence, William acknowledging the validity of my contract clause, and ultimately Sophia recognizing the truth and making it right. No one succeeds alone, especially when facing powerful opposition. In the months since being reinstated, many people had asked if I felt satisfied seeing Bennett's downfall. The question always puzzled me. This was never about revenge or personal vindication. It was about protecting something valuable, something that dozens of talented people had poured their hearts and minds into creating. It was about standing up for fairness and integrity in a world where those values are often sacrificed on the altar of ambition. You could have just walked away, found another job, Sophia had remarked during one of our strategy sessions. Many people would have. Why fight so hard? The answer came easily, because sometimes fighting is the only way to preserve what matters, not for ego or revenge, but because letting injustice win has costs beyond our personal circumstances. As I looked out over the city from my office window, I felt a profound sense of peace. The path had been difficult, but I had navigated it without compromising who I was or what I believed in. In the end, that might be the most significant victory of all. Sometimes, a single line of text buried in a 200-page contract can be your last ray of light in the darkness of injustice. I did not seek revenge or personal triumph. I simply stood up for what was right. And that distinction made all the difference, not just for my career, but for how I view my own worth. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when everything seemed stacked against you? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. And if you know someone facing workplace challenges, share this with them as a reminder that sometimes justice is found in the most unexpected places. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth is not determined by those who try to diminish you, but by your courage to defend what you believe in.